Welcome back to the DIY Creative Podcast. I am your host, Senator Jez, and we are off. We are off on a new journey. And that journey is we are going to bring other independent creatives on this show so that we can learn how and why and when and where and everything else about them, how they do what they do, how they stay sane, because we're all a little insane in this field when you become an independent creative. And today, I have my first guest from India. Am I correct? India, right?
That's right.
That's right.
Yes.
This is Ishan. And I said that right?
You did.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm so horrible about that. So, man, I tell you what, we're here celebrating you as an independent artist. We're going to have a conversation, but we're here celebrating Olden Days. Can you tell us a little bit about Olden Days?
Thank you so much, even for this platform. So, Olden Days started off with in my phone initially. So I was using this app Figure for a large most of my musical career life since I started making music, because I learned a lot of things, how to produce it and how to create a lot of variations on certain tracks just by playing around on my Figure app. But these tracks were initially created on my Figure app, but I had always sidelined them because I kept jamming and practicing live, small little live gigs for my family and friends based on these tracks, who will be able to connect with the songs instantly the moment they hear it. So it started off from my phone initially, and then I was able to bring it to my studio, where I did a lot of variations and a lot of layering on it on the Ableton music. And finally, I was able to bring out an album which is very personal, and the melodies that I've used in it are something that just comes and purely comes out of my heart and soul.
I tell you, that is really cool. And this is one of the reasons I wanted you to be my first guest, is that you embrace the iOS music experience, because that's something that I embrace a lot. And your workflow from iOS into Ableton mirrors my workflow, which a lot of my stuff I create on my iPads, and I either finish it on the iPad or I bring it into Ableton. But I was listening to the album Olden Days, and I was really getting lost in it. And I mean that completely as a compliment. I was completely getting lost in it. I have to say, two standout tracks to me are Queen Bee and The Godless Messenger.
Wow, that's really good to know.
Yeah, I mean, but I like the whole thing. Don't get me wrong. I like the whole thing. But you always have those ones that like speak to you, and those two really speak to me. When you were using Figure, that's an app that I have used in the past myself. What's your workflow look like on that?
So my basic first intention is to create the bass melody on the Figure. So I usually start with the bass, and I bring in the very minimal drums, the minimalistic drums that I could. So that's the first thing that I blend in, and the melody usually comes by itself. So I basically create the loop of the track in my head so that I don't deviate from what I want to achieve. And from there onwards, I build the track on. So the way, if you hear the album, you will see that it's more of an emotional journey. So the way the particular track, any track, if you pick up, it picks up from a certain level, but by the time it's ending, it's probably at a different chord progression or a note. So it does flow from the entire track flows into the other, but there are a lot of variations within it, which I believe I've been able to achieve purely because of me continuously jamming on my Figure app and the apps on iOS. So what I really want to state is, because the flexibility of having something in our palm, and which we can keep repeatedly playing for ourselves, jamming and creating different versions before we take it to the studio, before we even have a particular vision for the song, we somehow tend to settle ourselves with what exactly we need. So that's been my approach with the kind of tracks that I've made for this particular album. And I really stressed on the fact that I was able to pull this off because of the particular tracks being on the iOS. I have faced a lot of issues when I tend to create tracks from scratch on Ableton. It's not uh, it's not something that I'm sure everybody would face, but the kind of the direction that I want to take a particular track before I know the kind of melodies and the limitations of those melodies where I can go. It gets very difficult where to start and where to stop. But
You,
with the iOS setups and apps, it's something that I'm pretty hands-on. I know which direction it is going, and so it becomes a little easier for me to layer it when I bring it to the Ableton side.
what I really dig about what you just said is using Figure. Now, Figure is an app that a kid can pick up and they can make some kind of really weird EDM stuff right off the bat, right? And that's what most people use it for. But one of the
Right.
things that's great about being an independent musician is you can be fearless and you can use things in ways that they weren't initially meant to be used. And that
Right.
opens up a whole level of creativity, I find. And that seems like what you're describing right here. You take this app that on the surface is something completely different than what you're using it for. And then you make something great out of it. And that is the fearlessness that's inherent in independent music. And that's why I love independent music so much.
Right. Right. Yeah. I completely agree with you.
So how long have you been a musician?
So I started picking up the guitar in probably the year 2007 or 2008, and I had no musical background as such. So when I picked up the guitar, I just wanted to create music on my own. I started taking out, little covers of my favorite songs and just learning how to play the particular tracks on my guitar without knowing any basics of it. But slowly, I mean, once I started getting the hand of the layout of a guitar by myself, I started getting into the basic stuff of it. But I'd always prepared myself to be a producer. I always wanted to create my own sound space, and I wanted to somehow showcase it out and bring it to the world and to the people I could at one or some particular level connect with. So I've been in the music scene for the last about 10 years, but I've started really releasing my music for the last 2 years now.
Well, I for
So
one am happy you're doing that, by the way. I'm happy
yeah,
you got to
yes,
that point because you make it as you got to share it. You know what I mean?
right. I
No.
know. So with me, it's always been getting to learn the best that I can do for myself, because I tend to be more flexible and more independent if I know exactly what I'm doing instead of just copying what the templates sound like. So that's been my approach with music always.
That's awesome. I'm going to hit you with a question here, and this is something that I'm always curious. I lived abroad twice. I lived in Germany for a little while and lived in England. But let's be honest, Germany and England are pretty much a lot like the United States, except with the exception of language and a few little cultural quirks. I want
Right.
to know from you what it's like to be an independent in India, because I have no idea what your daily experiences are. I mean, do you gig? I mean, I guess right now nobody's gigging. We're in the middle of the COVID thing, but on
Right.
when things are normal, do you play out a lot? Do you find that people are receptive to the indie scene? I know you're releasing. How are those releases received in India?
So as of now, the Indian indie music scene is picking up a lot. There are a lot of really brilliant artists in electronic scene who are making it big, but financially, it's a little dull in India. There isn't a financial breakthrough for most of the artists, and they keep performing and. They do a lot of live gigging in and around the major cities of India. But I believe there is a cultural separation on the musical scene in India as well. A lot of electronic music is now picking up and fading the other acoustic and the guitar-based sounds, and it's picking up pretty fast. But still, I think there are financial issues that most artists are facing, for which they're not able to have their breakthrough yet. But those who are fearless and those who really want to push the edge, they are doing it nevertheless. So me mostly, I have been able to play and do a little, underground kind of sets with my friends. And I have received really good response from them, and which keeps pushing me to do it. But these are mostly DJ sets and me playing different vibe and different electronic artists for them, so that they get to know about the different artist scene as well. Because I believe a lot of music that I play really makes them happy, and it makes them learn about the different variations and the different genres and the blending of different genres that is currently happening throughout the world, especially with the indie artists. So yeah, so I have not been gigging some my own original productions for long, but now, because the moment I released the album, I was able to go on the Instagram live. I was able to perform the entire album in entirety uh, to a small limited audience who gave me a very, very warm response, and I'm really looking forward to do more of them now.
All right. Well, you just mentioned something. Now, you did a live stream concert. So
Right.
just in case I forget at the end, I mean, we're not ending yet, but just in case I forget at the end, could you let people know right now how they can find you online and where they can see what you're doing online?
So I've been mostly active on my Instagram profile because I feel that that is a good leverage right now for me or for any artist who's coming up to give the product to the masses and what they really want to do. So as a starting point and as a tipping point, Instagram should be a good place to showcase your talent, uh, be it live or be something that you have recently released, because most of the people are heavily into social media, and Instagram is standing out. For me at least, it has stood out the most.
Well, we kind of met there.
Yeah, you did.
Anywhere else? Do you have a YouTube channel or something where they can also maybe check out some of your stuff?
Yes, so YouTube also it is there, but I haven't started doing I haven't started uploading my live gigs yet. Couple of DJ sets that I have done are there on YouTube, but of course Instagram and YouTube are the two platforms on which I'm the most
Okay.
lively.
And on Instagram, it's how do you pronounce your last name?
So it's Mukherjee, Ishan Murkherjee.
Could you go
Yeah.
ahead and spell out your full name so people, because his Instagram is instagram.com/his name.
Yeah, so it is ISHAN with no space, nothing. Mukherjee, Ishan Mukherjee.
All right, man. So now people can find you. Now we can move on, and now they can go and see who we're talking about here.
That's brilliant. That's really nice.
You touched on a point in your lands over there that actually is kind of the same over here. When it comes to the independent economy, I guess we can call it. Most everybody on the independent scene that I know over here has a day job as well. I work at the museum as a composer and things. I'm very lucky in that, but
Right.
that's something that's kind of universal in both of our lands.
Right.
Let me ask you something really. This is going to be out of left field. This is going to be a weird question. Do you find that when you're trying to get people interested in your music, being an independent, do you find that you have more luck with strangers than those that are close to you?
It's been a 50-50 as of now for me. So getting attention of the strangers had been an issue earlier, but now probably with the new release, I think I'm garnering a lot of attention from the unknown people as well. So I think if your particular release or your creation sticks out to even the unknown people, they will reach out to you for sure the moment they hear it. So I've been posting and doing a lot of promotion for myself on Reddit and various other community levels, from where I've been able to get some hits with people I have not known who have just stumbled on my music, and they have given me a thumbs up saying that they like it and they would like to see more of it coming. So it's been a 50-50 for me. So I won't say that I am at a particular scene where I have a lot of musicians and people who are very musically inclined in a way that they also produce. I'm more from the side where I'm more from the audience side, I would say. So with that particular situation, I think people are intrigued, curious, and they really look forward for something new and refreshing to hit them.
Cool. How has things been affecting you professionally, musically, and professionally outside of music ever since COVID-19 dropped?
So the moment, so in India, we are in lockdown for many months now, about three months already. But I think the musicians are coming out with a different level of creativity that I can see on Instagram. They are heavily promoting them visually and at an audio level, because they are not able to express themselves at a live event. So they are bringing out different ways of engaging their audience. So I think within the music scene, they are trying different levels of getting their recognition and getting their connection with the fans. So it's been tough for them not being able to pull out certain shows and events, but they are however collaborating within themselves and releasing a lot of tracks. So there have been a couple of indie artists, for example, who have come together from different areas, different genres, and they have brought out an EP where 22 different artists have been able to do sampling based production on a particular track, and how 22 artists from different genres could come up with a particular track without having any kind of social interaction except for the social media. So they're coming up with a lot of innovative and new releases, I would say.
That's awesome. I was mentioning in a couple of ways recently to people that I know that it's horrible the reason we have to do things like we're doing right now. But some of the creative things that are happening right now would have never happened had we not been in this situation.
Correct.
Because we have to go up to it.
Yeah, for me, the lockdown was I would consider it as a blessing, because I did get my chance to dwell myself into the musical side of the album. I believe if the lockdown wouldn't have been there, I would have taken some more time to release my particular album.
One thing as an artist you're always good at is putting things off and kicking the can down the road, so to speak. Like it's never good enough,
Right.
or I need to do this, or I need to do that, and then
Right.
you're stuck there, and and there's nothing else to do.
Yeah, true. I totally agree.
I'm gonna throw another completely off the topic question at you. I mean, this year we've seen a lot of stars pass, and I wanted to ask you about Irfan Khan. That has to be a real hard hit in your nation, right?
So I think the passing of Irfan Khan has been it has hit people at a very personal level, because the kind of the movies and the kind of personality he used to portray in those particular movies and series, and he had been in the Indian cinema scene for a very short time, but a very powerful. I think impact he's had. So I could see everyone that I have known being impacted on a very personal level, as if they have lost somebody very close to them, because his performances and his talent was something that everybody used to look up at, be it an indie artist or any upcoming uh, actor, or even the remnant actors who've been there for a very long time. They've always looked up to him for the person that he was, and the kind of expressions, and just being himself on the screen. So people have been impacted at a very personal level because of him passing away at such an instance.
Yeah, I really only know him from the stuff that has been released over here, such as A Life of Pi, in
Yeah.
Jurassic Park, The Lost World, and things. He had a range, man. He could play from Meek all the way to almost what would you say, rock star in in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
So that was a range. I wanted to ask you about that because I mean,
Right.
uh, that kind of thing tends to affect the people as a whole culturally.
I'm happy that he was able to get that international recognition at that, short period of time that he was active in the Hollywood scene as well.
I really appreciate you talking about that because right here we're not only talking about being independent artists. I mean, we actually have a chance to talk about different cultures, and I love that. That's amazing, and how the outlooks are different and things. It's
Right.
funny though, on the independent artist thing, it sounds like it's pretty much the same here as it is there. Just
Yeah, even,
we're
yeah,
all
totally.
grinding, man. We're all grinding. So, do you have anything special planned going forward with this new album?
So, I wanted to give a little pause on my musical production as of now because I wanted to heavily market and promote it. I thought if I get back to making music at this point of time after releasing this album, I might lose out on the marketing and promotion of it. So I would say that now is the best time for me to go ahead and let the entire world know of my creation. So I think promoting and marketing whatever you're doing, and if you're getting good hits, you should do it more. And but you have to hit the nail at the correct time, probably. So my only direction with the album is to showcase it and float it maximum areas and maximum places that I can.
That's
That's
awesome.
my approach as of now. But of course, there are other amazing collaborations that is going to come up very soon, and I am trying to get my hands on various different genres and doing a little techno set or a particular complete live acoustic set, just to flip the game for the people. So I want to do more of that and get to know about more soundscapes and sound space that I can come up with. So that's my vision for the next few months, probably.
Cool. Sounds like you got it. Like you know where you got to go, and that's a good thing. So,
Yeah.
let's see. Let's go in a little bit different direction here. What
Yeah.
in your experience? You've been in music for about 10 years, I think you said, and you've been releasing for about two. Uh,
Yeah.
what advice do you have for people getting into the independent music game or into the music game at all? If they're just now coming into it, starting out, what have you seen in the past 10 years that could be of help to people coming into the scene?
So I have mostly faced, one particular aspect that most of the artists are struggling with is the kind of they really want to achieve a particular sound structure and a soundscape or a style which will help them distinguish them from the other artists, and they constantly try to achieve that, and they always tend to underestimate themselves. So I would say that be fearless, and whatever you are creating, it might be that you might not like it, but there would be somebody in the world who might be able to connect with it. So don't scrap that particular idea that you have in your mind. Just go ahead with whatever is hitting you the first thing. I think the first few retakes you take in your studio are probably the most poured out from your heart. So I tend to keep very few retakes in my studio when I'm layering on my Ableton. I don't tend to deliberate on anything at that point of time. I just let it improvise and let it free flow at that point of time. So for indie artists, that's what I would want to suggest. Just be at it and don't really care about what people are going to think. If you think that is something that you have poured out, as an emotional kind of a deliverance from your end, you should definitely go ahead and create layers on it and just make it better, is what I would say, instead of just scrapping it out on uh, redoing something out there.
I love that advice. I totally love that advice. The be fearless part, especially. I've
Right.
been telling people for a long time, don't make anything for anybody else. And you could make the
Right.
argument, but they listen to stuff on the radio, so I need to make stuff that sounds like on the radio. But that's not really the
Right.
case. You need to find your
Yeah.
tribe, and your tribe is the people that like the stuff you create. And it's hard to find them, but you got to go find them because you're always going to have more people that don't like your stuff than do like your stuff. You can't make something for the masses. You have to make something for the people that like what you're making, and they're out there, and you got to find them, and there's got to be a fire to what you create, and that's where the fearlessness comes in. You can't make what you think other people want to hear. You have to make what's in your head.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Only and completely rely on your music scene. Don't leave any other occupation or job that you have just to get into the music scene. Keep it as a side passion, and because I think all musicians at this point of time need some kind of a support and a backup plan as well, because with all the COVID issues happening, not being able to perform live for at least some time would be a big financial hit. So whatever backup or support that you have, keep at it. Like, for example, you have a side profession, and just to let the world know, I'm also a lawyer. So that's my occupation. Like, that's my job from that I really have a passion for as well. So I'm a lawyer. I deal with a lot of corporate and commercial contracts, but music has always been something that is very personal to me, and I've been able. I want to learn more about experimenting with myself and surprising myself in that particular field. So that's, I just want to state that here.
Yeah. I'll tell you a pet peeve that I have. And who really does this? It's a lot of the marketers out there that are trying to tell people how to market their music and things like this. And it's not all of them, but it's a few of them. And they say things like, have you made this much in a month? Then you're not a musician. And here's the thing that always bugs me, because if you play an instrument, you're a musician. And everybody sets their own idea of what success is. Like, I joke around, people, hey, you're a musician. Hey, has my mom heard you on the radio? It doesn't matter if your mom's heard me on the radio, because actually nobody's heard me on the radio. Because guess what? You can't find me on the radio. But, hey, I'm playing down at Slim's this weekend, come check it out, and I have my albums, and, I do all right. My music pays for itself, and I'm lucky in that. So my job at the museum pays for my life, but the music has gotten to a point where it pays for itself. And and if it ever gets bigger than that, then I'm all for that. But right now, I'm happy with what it is. I think it comes down to, as an independent, you have to understand that you have to be comfortable in your own skin. If your goal is to come out and be as big as, and I don't listen to a lot of pop music, so I don't know if Justin Timberlake's even relevant anymore. But if your idea is to come out and be Justin Timberlake, you have to go down a completely different path than most of us are going down, because you're doing something different, and you're not going to do it on your own. And what does he have to sell your soul to the devil at the crossroads or something? I don't know how it works, but you just gotta learn to be comfortable in your own skin. If you have a goal, then you have to figure out a way to reach that goal. And if you're reaching your goals, that's success.
I completely agree. I think it's a backup and a support that every musician needs, whether it be your audience or your manager or your record label or someone even bigger. There always needs to be some kind of a backup support for all musicians. So we need to figure that out first. Yeah.
Well, I've made more money from my music doing things that people will never know that I did it. If that makes sense.
That's really, really good to know.
Of all the music I write for the museum, nobody knows I wrote that because it's in the name of the museum. But that pays bills. I've scored a couple of things here and there. I've gotten my music on a couple of things. But again, we're not talking Disney level stuff here. So people don't know that I've done that, but that allows me to release my albums, and that allows me to get that music out there that is under my name. And in the end, again, that comes down to it. Do you want to be popular and known and famous, or do you want to be a working musician? And that's a question you have to ask yourself early on. Or do you want to keep it even more low key? And whatever you want out of it is fine. That's a lot of people don't get that. Most of us make music for the love of music.
Right.
I'd do this if it didn't bring anything to me other than being able to make music.
Right. Totally agree with you there. Yes. I connect with you there on that particular aspect a lot.
How is that now, speaking of going down another road again, how is that field in India, the film industry and stuff, and getting placements in commercials and things like that? Is that a lucrative thing in your country?
So it is. I see that there is a lot of scope for commercial music coming in, but for indie artists, getting that breakthrough is very difficult unless you make that kind of music which you hear on the ads of YouTube, or certain animated ads, or what you hear on the TV. Unless you're making that kind of music, it gets very difficult for you to break through with the film industry and the commercial part of the filmmaking. So for indie artists, unless somebody really selects you to make music for them for that particular project, it's a task to get attention there. So I would say that's more towards the commercial side of making music.
Well, I'd have to say, listening to Olden Days here, man, some of your music would sound really good on a soundtrack.
Wow, that's really nice to know. I'm
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it people do connect uh, at a level on at that stage as well, where they can somehow connect. I'm so glad that you said that. So I think I should pitch in to certain areas that side as well. Now that you say it,
Yeah, yeah, explore all opportunities because I tell you, man,
yeah.
you had there's a quality to your music that just fits to what I guess you could say mood scene.
I am happy that you told me. I will try to venture in that direction as well. I have tried to steer myself away from very large attention, or very commercial or a mainstream approach. But now that you say it, I think I will give that a shot as well. Let's see how it goes.
Now I'm not cutting us off here, but we're getting to the point where Zoom may cut us off. So I want to take this opportunity right here. Is there anything you want to bring up or say that I haven't touched on or we haven't touched on yet? Anything that you want to blast out to the world?
Just one thing I would say regarding the tracks that I made on Olden Days. If it's more of an emotional journey that a particular audience goes through, picking up from the first track onwards, and the flow of the music from one track to the other. So as I stated earlier also, I really don't have a structure as such for the songs. It picks up differently, and by the time it's ending, it's at a different level. So basically, the way it flows from one chord progression to the other, you wouldn't even barely notice the difference, but you're in that journey, you're going through it. So I've steered away from having like a basic template of a track and making it in that particular aspect. So that's what I like to say about the indie music scene, of how independent and free you are to do what you want to do. So I would say that break all the limitation and restrictions that you have, and push for what you want to achieve in that particular direction.
Excellent, man. Excellent. So, just so everybody knows out there, the album is Olden Days, OLDENDAZE. And in the links to this show, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to the hyperfollow from, you use DistroKid, right?
Right.
Right.
Yes.
I'm going to put a link in of the hyperfollow so that you can find this album on whatever platform you use. And I highly recommend you go get this. I have nothing but praise for this album. And knowing how it was made, that makes me love it even more. You had to have a great time making this, right?
I did. I really enjoyed. The only limitation and the issue that I faced was not knowing how and where to end it, because it was a very free flowing sound that was hitting me. So before I recorded, I must have had about 1,000 different versions of the exact same track. So the best part about it is when I play live now, I can improvise those different variations to bring that more complexity in that particular track, which I'm really enjoying right now.
That's awesome, man. That'll shake people up that know the music. I always love when that happens. You're listening to
Yeah.
something, you're like, wait a second, they're going. This was in Kansas, and they're going to Toledo right now.
Yeah.
They took a different fork in the road. It
I
keeps
love
things
that
up.
about music, just the variations that you can bring in at that particular point of time, especially in live performance. So I would say that my my music in the album is very minimal and ambient, but what I'm playing live, there are a lot of different aspects that is coming in.
That's so cool. Well, hey, man, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for being my first guest on
Likewise.
the new format of the podcast. Thank you for staying up so late. Everybody, it's like almost 4 a.m. where he lives. Maybe it is 4 a.m. by now. I've lost track of time. So, I mean, thank you for that. That was really cool. And everybody, you've got to check out the album Olden Days. Again, I will have the links in the show notes to this podcast. It's called Hyperfollow, which you can follow him on any of the services that the record is on, depending on what you listen to. But again, I appreciate you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, and all the best to you, man. All the best.
Thank you so much.
You bet,
we
dude.
shall connect again.
All right.
Stay good, stay safe, and we'll see each other soon.
That sounds great, man.